Hi guys, again Johnson from driversuccess.com. Today I'm going to talk about how you can go about determining your hourly rates as a small business owner or a contractor. This is a formula we're going to go over today that you can use whether you're a contractor or you're charging your customer hourly services, whether you're like a consultant of some kind. It's a very simple and straightforward calculation. It accounts for your salary per hour, your direct expenses per hour, your indirect expenses, and your profit. Now, profit is extremely important, and now this may be obvious to some. Profit, everyone knows you have to have profit in terms of your hourly rate, but it's not obvious to all. And I actually had a friend of mine recently who hit the ground running. Everything was going great. And then he found out that he didn't account for profit, and you need profit. Okay, you need profit in order to finance your growth, improve your products and services, improve your company's long-term future, that type of thing. So you need profit. Okay, you don't want to be financing your future growth out of your salary. Okay, so we're going to go through an example today of an individual who has decided to start his own painting company. He's been asked to paint 3 rooms, and he knows it's going to take him 16 hours. He's been a painter and he used to work for another company. So the first portion of the calculation is to determine his hourly salary. Now this is probably the simplest part of the entire equation, because you know what you should be paid per hour. You've worked at other companies or you've worked for other people in the past, so you know what that is. So in our example, the individual is making $18 an hour. He's going to give himself a raise, and he's going to say, I'm going to make $20 an hour. So right away, we've finished the first portion of the equation. $20 an hour, that's what he's going to make. Now we're going to move on to the direct expenses per hour. When you think about direct expenses, think about all of those expenses that go directly to the manufacturing of a given product or service. In the sense of a manufacturer, it's all the direct labor, direct material. In terms of a service, it's all the direct expenses that helped you provide that service. And in terms of a contractor, it's all those direct expenses that are directly attributed to the job that you're doing. Okay? And in this case, we're talking about the direct expenses that go into the work that this individual is doing for this customer, which is to paint the rooms. So he's going to total up his direct expenses. Okay? Right off the bat, he says, you know what, for every single room I paint, I'm going to need paint. I'm going to need 2 cans of paint at $25 each, total for $50. I'm going to need 1 can of primer, $20 total. I'm going to need rollers and brushes. I'm going to buy 1 pack for $10. I'm going to need sheets and painter's tape, so I'm going to buy 1 pack of those. It's going to cost me $15, total for $15. So the total direct expenses for 1 room is $95, okay? For 3 rooms, it's 95 times 3, 285, which is very straightforward. And in order to determine his direct expenses per hour, he's going to take his 285 in terms of his total direct expenses and divide it by the 16 hours, and you get this 1781 right here, okay? So now we have filled out the second portion of the equation. Direct expenses are $17.81. So that's done. We've done the salary, now we've done the direct expenses. Moving on to indirect expenses. When you look at indirect expenses, think about those support expenses that you have that can't really be charged to any one customer or any one product that you're manufacturing, but they're expenses that you have to support nonetheless. So, in terms of a manufacturer, these are your administrative support costs, which include sales, marketing, accounting, these type of things. In terms of the painter, in this case, we're talking about the cost for gas, the cost for insurance, repairs on his truck, and these type of things. So what he does is he's, over a period of a week, he totals up his indirect expenses, and he says, you know what, I spend about $400 a week on gas and upkeep on my car and everything, and I work a 40-hour work week. So very quickly, his indirect expenses are $10 per hour, which is simply $400 divided by 40 hours, okay? So we've got salary, we've got direct expenses per hour, we've got indirect expenses per hour. Now we have to account for profit. So what we're going to do is we're going to add up all of these inside, and we're going to do 20 plus 1781 plus 10. It's going to give us $47.81. And now we have to account for profit. Now, there is no hard and fast rule when it comes to profit. What you need to do is you need to basically research the type of market you're in, the type of customers you're servicing. There's plenty of information available on the internet. I can't tell you what to charge as a profit because I don't know what you're doing, but there's plenty of information that you can secure. Again, you can look on the internet, you can talk to someone who's run a similar business, you can talk to individuals that you know that have done this before. So in this case, we're going to assume that this individual wants to make 15% of the profit. So we're going to take this 4781, we're going to divide it by 85, okay? And doing this is going to give us an hourly rate of $56.25 per hour. Now, this calculation, we've accounted for hourly salary, direct expenses per hour, indirect expenses per hour. We've now got a total per hour in terms of what this individual can charge his customer, and we're going to take that multiplied by the 16 hours times 16 equals $900. Okay, so he should charge his customer $900 to paint all these rooms. So this is a very simple and straightforward way to determine your hourly rates. And this is a good way to do it when you first start out, okay? Because it's very straightforward in terms of direct and indirect expenses. As you move forward in your business, you're going to want to look at what's called overhead, okay? You may, over time, start hiring other people, other painters or other support people, an administrative assistant, these type of things. So you want to basically account for overhead, okay? Overhead, very simply, is indirect expenses divided by direct expenses. And that's going to give you your overhead rate, okay? So that's going to give you your rate. So in our example, it's $10 divided by 1781, and that's going to give us an overhead rate of 0.56. To determine the percentage, you simply take the rate times 100, which is 0.56 times 100, which equals 56% as an overhead rate. Okay? So in this case, we've defined the hourly salary, the direct expenses per hour, and indirect expenses per hour, and have accounted for profit. We've done it for someone who's just started out, and as you grow your business, you'll be interested in looking at your overhead, and you'll have to track that on a monthly basis. Overhead is simply your indirect expenses divided by your direct expenses. That gives you the rate. In this case, it's $10 divided by 1781, which is 0.56. Take the rate multiplied by 100 to give you a percentage, and you got your overhead percentage right there at 56%. So in this case, this individual has accounted for an hourly rate that takes care of his salary, expenses per hour, indirect expenses per hour, and profit. So that's it. Ian Johnson, driversuccess.com. Bye-bye.